Anthony Grassi here for College.town at the 2026 NCAA Convention in Washington, D.C. Happy to sit down with Denison Associate Vice President and Director of Athletics, Matt Tanney. Matt, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So we'll start at Denison.
Yeah.
You're 6 months in.
Yeah.
How difficult was it to leave your alma mater in Wabash College?
Yeah, not an easy decision, certainly. Have nothing but amazing things to say about the people at Wabash. Had a great, really unique opportunity there to lead the athletic program as an alum. It's a special place. As I look at sort of the broader landscape of things and where things are headed as nationally and the strength of the athletic program at Denison, it's just an incredible opportunity. And so I'm fortunate to have a president there in Adam Weinberg that is really tuned in and really plugged into athletics and understands the importance of athletics. So it's been a great transition.
How difficult was it following a legend in her own right, who was also an alum of the institution and was there for decade and a half?
Yeah.
How difficult is it to step into those shoes, and what, maybe on a more like tangible, tactical level, how do you go about literally stepping in and saying, all right, this has been done, we've had a leader who's been here for 14 years, and now we're shifting a little bit. How do you go about trying to mesh what was and what will be?
Yeah, well, the program won 2 national championships last year.
For sure.
So Nan left it in a good place. I will give Nan so much credit for creating a culture there of coaches, student athletes, and just the program as a whole of just everybody's rowing in the same direction, which is a really great thing to walk into as an athletic director. All have some different ideas, all have some different ways in terms of how we organize the athletic program, programming for our students, things like that. But I think at its heart, philosophically, I'm fortunate from having worked with Nan in the conference for a number of years. Her and I are, I think, aligned pretty strongly on really the student-centeredness of the experience. And so that's not going to change. But I just think the way that we, just different programs, maybe some infrastructure things, technology pieces, best practices that I've seen that we can integrate that are just going to take us from really, really good, hopefully, to even better.
One of those things I imagine is the addition of sports. You guys are adding or elevating men's fencing from a club to a varsity sport, adding women's water polo as a club sport, and then transitioning to a varsity sport. Are there other sports that how do you go about evaluating that?
Yeah.
And is there kind of a cap? Because obviously there's facility needs, there's
sure.
all the support staff that's needed for each of these things, there's a whole bunch of things.
Yeah.
Is there a limit maybe on what the sport or the right number of sports
I don't think so. I don't think so. You're right. We've added sports number 27 and 28 in women's water polo and men's fencing here in the last 4 months. Part of this, I think, speaks to President Weinberg and sort of his vision for Denison, his vision for the athletic program, which I'm really grateful to support. And no, I think we're going to continue to evaluate options. We know that we can attract students that want to have a really quality, integrated college athletic experience, and as long as we can meet all those things that you said with facilities and infrastructure and coaches and athletic trainers and athletic communications professionals, as long as we can continue to meet those needs of those programs, I think we're going to continue to grow, which is really exciting.
So we'll step back, maybe go 30,000, 50,000 foot, however high you want to go.
Yeah.
In October, you wrote a piece for us about embracing the moment for Division III and spoke a bunch about the differences of philosophies within the division. 3-4 months have passed. I'm curious how you're thinking about the division's position now, given the differing philosophies. Yeah,
I think we're going to learn a lot this week here at the meetings and the business session and the issues forum relative to those conversations. I think my position is probably even maybe a little stronger now than it was in the fall. I think the division has great opportunity to be more creative and to be more distinctive in what it provides from a college athletic experience for student athletes. There is, wide-scale, dramatic, incredible things happening in Division I. I talk to my colleagues in that space that still work in that space. Sometimes it's almost reality's stranger than fiction, right? I mean, it's just the things that they're dealing with on a daily basis with agents and all these things. My concern is that the Division III membership is getting pulled in that direction ever so slowly, and I don't think has to be our fate. I think we can have other means and other mechanisms to be creative and think about how we can create an experience that's different from that, not more similar to that.
What has led you over that time period to become more strong in your opinion?
Well, you're thinking about the proposals that we're going to talk about here this week at the convention. We have a redshirting proposal, which is something that we talked about as a membership just a couple years ago when we reaffirmed our commitment to the philosophy statement. Division III athletics should be primarily a 4-year experience. And I guess I should preface all this, Anthony, by saying, like, this is not I don't begrudge anybody for wanting to operate this way, but I think as a division, when you have 400 plus institutions, it's not practical to think that all 400 of those programs are all going to think and act in the same way. And I know from conversations this fall that there are presidents and there are athletic directors and there are institutions that feel strongly that things like redshirting and NIL collectives, those types of things are bad for this level of college athletics.
Should they be considered bad, though? I mean, and obviously the philosophy statement is primarily a 4-year undergraduate experience. Yep. But the perception around legislation has always seemed to me of we want to kind of prevent the outliers of things.
Yeah.
Or that's what a lot of things start to address. Mm-hmm. Do you think that because clearly this is in your opinion, an outlier issue.
Sure.
Should it be taken with that, I guess, looked at through that lens?
Yeah, I think what's happened here nationally as just higher education in general, I mentioned this, in my piece over the fall, how challenging it's become from an enrollment perspective, how challenging it's become from a recruitment standpoint. And lots of campuses are facing lots of difficult decisions. And I think things like redshirting, where you're extending somebody's clock and essentially asking them to pay for a 9th or a 10th semester of tuition, right? Like, I understand why some campuses and some conferences would be supportive of that. I just don't think continuing to look more like Division II and more like Division I is necessarily the answer. Like, and that's where I speak to the creativity piece of this. I don't think that we need to continue to try to emulate what the other divisions are doing. Why can't we do something different? Or if there are a subset of schools that think collectives are great for their students and that think redshirting is great for their students, that's fantastic, right? Like, great for them. If they want to go create another opportunity somewhere else in a different scope or federation within the division, more power to them. I just think that when you have 400 plus institutions, there's too much variance to think that everybody's going to think the same way.
Would you support then the split of Division III? Obviously, maybe that's a little too aggressive. Maybe the split necessarily has always been seen, I guess in my mind, as a dramatic
That's
action.
Correct. That's correct.
Intermediate step between there and the other side of the cliff is
that's right.
Maybe subdivisions within where certain sports you participate in the same, certain they're different. Maybe similar to how maybe lacking creativity on my part. Division I is between FBS and FCS.
Sure. No, I think those are the conversations that should be happening, and I think you're right. When people speak to a split, it does come across as very dramatic. And this goes, in the 2000s, early to mid 2000s, there was a conversation for a Division IV. Mm-hmm. I think that's terrible branding. I don't think anybody wants to be in a Division IV. But that's not to say that conversations shouldn't happen about differences in philosophies across the division. And that's why I'm really encouraged by the Presidents and Chancellors Forum this week when presidents are engaged on this topic. Because at the end of the day, that's where this is going to have to come from, right? Like, athletic directors can help execute this, but the presidents need to have those conversations with the NCAA to move us forward.
Should that governance model maybe be tweaked? In which case, because presidents, as you mentioned already, have a ton on their plate. They are,
that's right.
In many cases, maybe not many, in several cases, they're fighting to keep an institution open.
Yep.
Not just fighting to,
that's right.
break even balance the budget. We're trying to stay open.
Right.
On top of the enrollment challenges, the funding challenges from the government funding challenges, state funding challenges.
Yeah.
How do you kind of, should there be a fine line where certain things from a governance standpoint need to lie within the people that are more athletic focused? But this is your every day.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that, but I mean, there's a larger structure there that needs to happen for presidents to I mean, I think the overhaul of the governance structure relative to the President's Council and the Management Council, those bodies seems to be functioning at a relatively stable place right now. I am a little concerned with, again, back to this redshirting proposal, how that comes like a position of no support from our Management Council when this is something that just 2 years ago we talked about. So these are conversations I'm interested in hearing more about this week. I will say, I think to your point on sort of championship, maybe subdivisions, I've heard that. I think as a division, we're a little too wedded to the 3.18% from the Division III distribution. I think there's opportunity. Let's put it on paper. What would it look like if you had two different championships with the same number of institutions? How would that look financially? What would it look like for institutions maybe to have a little buy-in themselves in a championship structure, right, within the NCAA? I think all these things can still happen within the NCAA, but it's just it is such a dramatic time in Division I that to just sit here and let the world come to us in Division III, I think would be a folly. Like, I really think we need to be more proactive, and that's really what I'm advocating for.
And how would you advocate for going about that? Because as I think we've, your piece is laid out. You and I have talked about this.
Yeah.
The challenge is that the tentacles of this are somewhat never-ending.
Yeah, I think people need to have really honest conversations about where they are as institutions, where they are as conferences, and where we are as an association. I think it's very difficult to get people in a room to have sort of unfiltered dialogue about their institution's position on athletics. And again, like, I totally understand why some institutions are using athletics as 100% of an enrollment driver. Like, to your point on people keeping the doors open, like, without those athletic programs, the institutions may not be viable. Like, I completely respect that. But we shouldn't assume that those places have the same priorities as other institutions that aren't solely reliant on student tuition dollars to keep the doors open. So I think that those are the differences that we need to really put out more in the open and have honest conversations and let those conversations guide where the different paths may go.
You mentioned earlier you feel that the division is too wedded to the 3.18%.
Yeah.
As you've, I imagine, thought about this, you've talked about this with your colleagues and many other people. Are there, when you say, as you say that, the thought that comes to my mind is twofold. Maybe the 3.18%, if you hypothetically, in the big picture, change scenario, you say, all right, let's try to change the divisions. Yeah. Go from 3 to something different.
Sure.
There's the concern, I imagine, among many administrators outside of Division I that number goes from 3.18 to less than 3.18. Whether that's overall or relative to the number of institutions that remain within your subdivision.
That's right.
How do you think about what opportunities maybe from a funding standpoint, whether that's on a revenue or an expense standpoint, lie ahead?
And when we went through this conversation on the percentage allocation, was it 4 or 5 years ago now when we had the association-wide, we adopted the new constitution, and it was made pretty clear, abundantly clear, that Division III wouldn't receive more than 3.18%. But what I'm saying, Anthony, is I don't think that needs to handcuff us as a membership, right? If that number were to go down, I don't have any reason to believe that it would, but if it were, what I'm saying is what's to stop institutions from putting in a little bit of skin in the game to support championship experiences, right? Not everybody can do that, right? But there are institutions that can, and it's not the smallest number. So again, that may not be an answer or a solution, but I think it's the type of conversation we should be having more out in the open than we are right now.
You clearly have thought about this a lot.
Yeah.
And it seems that you have the ability and one way or another to take your Denison hat.
Yeah.
And say, all right, you can either take your Denison hat off and say, all right, here's, we put on the NCAA Division III hat and say, here's what we need.
Yeah.
Do you think that your peers maybe have the ability, not in a negative sense, but more of in the same way that presidents probably feel, there's so much challenge going on within my ecosystem that it's difficult for me to think what's best for the division long term when I'm focused so much on keeping my institution viable this year?
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. What I'm saying is both things can be true, right? People can both face the things that they're dealing with on campus in a way that affects their local situation while also being a willing and partner and advocate for what we should do as an association, as a membership. I was on a panel back this fall with some colleagues at Ohio State, and we were meeting with some college counselors about the differences between the divisions. And it is just so stark that, to your point, we are in the same ecosystem. That is true. Beyond that, it barely feels like we're on the same planet sometimes with the different things that we're dealing with. And so that's what I'm saying. I don't think we need to lean in more to redshirting, to lean in more to NIL collectives. Those were constructs for Division I and sometimes in Division II that I don't think serve our interests.
If you had ultimate power, and we put it, Matt Tanney is the dictator of Division III, I imagine there's
Let's
probably
go czar.
whatever
like
noun you want to call it. Two sides of it. The first change you would make is what, and structurally, are there any changes you would advocate for? Or I guess you, in that position, you would make?
I think we need to have a more in-depth conversation about championships and what does that mean for the membership, because that is what everybody is sort of crafting their experience around, right? And this multiple AQ bid proposal that's out there right now speaks to that. Institutions are struggling, so they create these larger conferences, and now they're feeling the pressure because teams aren't qualifying for championships. Not qualifying for NCAA championships affects the student experience. So I would want to have a really open conversation about what does that mean for us? How important is that to us? Because I think that will inform a lot of the other things we're talking about here. And then I think we have to look at the finances, and you have to look at how the money's distributed. To my point, I don't think that 3.18% has to be everything to us. I'll leave it there.
What should championships be within Division III?
I mean, your point on the sort of FBS, FCS model doesn't seem too unrealistic to me. Now, at the Division I level, that's stratified by amount of scholarship given. I don't know how you make that distinction in Division III when there's already no athletic aid. But maybe it's stratified by the legislation that people are using, right? In the Division I place, you've got institutions that are scholarship at different levels. Maybe in Division III, it's, hey, our student athletes are eligible for NIL collectives. In this other model, they're not. In one version of the membership, students can redshirt, they can play for 5 or 6 years, whatever that may be. in another portion is primarily a 4-year experience, like it says in the philosophy statement, like we just voted on a couple years ago. Maybe those are the distinctions we make moving forward.
Excellent. Matt, thank you for taking the time to join me, dive deep, talk everything D3.
Thanks, Anthony.